This video is going to be a walkthrough on how to replace a broken deck spindle. In this particular video, I am working on a Craftsman LT1000. However, the instructions on how to do this would be similar for several other models of Craftsman, Husqvarna, etc. This is a deck that has two attachment points at the front. Some of the newer ones may only have one, and you may have a different type of spindle. The model number is located under the seat. We'll come back to that later at the end of the video. I'll show you how to look up parts online. Okay, so the spindle that's broken is this left-hand side one. When I was mowing, I hit a large rock, and it was enough to crack one of my three supports. Okay, as you can see underneath here, that's the one that's snapped right off. And initially, I was just getting a real bad scalping. The spindle still is working, but it's loose. So initially, I thought I actually bent the blade only. And then upon closer inspection, I realized that the spindle housing had actually broke. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just use some penetrating oil. You can use WD-40, PB Blaster, etc. And my hope is to try not to break as much hardware as I can as I take these off, including the deck mounting hardware, which on the new spindle kit, I did get all new mounting hardware, which is something I'll talk about later in the video, but you need to make sure when you're buying these replacement parts that you are getting the mounting hardware, because a lot of that stuff will snap, and you'll see in the video it did snap for me. First, I'm just going to remove this guard. These are all hex head bolts, so it's just 3 bolts. Alright, next I'm going to take the blade off with my impact gun, and as you'll see here in a second, my air pressure is very low, so I was able to take it off, but I turned it up later. As I mentioned earlier, originally I was just hoping that my blade had just been bent, so the reason I got 2 different blades on there is the one that I'm taking off right now is an older blade that I put on, and after measuring the edges I realized it wasn't the blade. Alright, we flipped the deck back over. Now we're just getting the belt out of the way. And next we're going to take the pulley off. Sometimes these can really get stuck on. I was a little bit worried because I didn't want to bend that up. I didn't have a replacement for that. So I use a little more penetrating oil, as you can see. And I got a claw hammer and a rubber mallet. And luckily, after a couple hits, it came loose. Now, the teeth on these pulleys can get really chewed up from hitting stuff. It's a little hard to tell in the video here, but these teeth are actually still pretty good on this. Next, I'm taking the 3 bolts for the spindle housing off. This is what bolts them down to the deck. These are very common to snap when you're taking them off, which is exactly what happened here. Luckily, when I did order the new replacement part, I did get 3 new support bolts for it, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Alright, so now the spindle's loose. I'm just lifting the deck up to get it off the sawhorse. As you can see, that little protective guard got pretty banged up too. And you'll see here in a second the sheared off piece. Alright, so I'm just going to start putting the new spindle on. I'm going to use some anti-seize with the bolts. That way if they do need to come off, hopefully they don't shear off again. Any orientation's fine. Right now I'm just lining the hole up to get the initial bolt in. Once I have that bolt in, you'll see it's pretty well supported. Okay, it's just the same process for the other two. If you have a spindle that has 4, then you'd have 3 more to connect. So I'm going to speed this video up here for a second, and then we'll come right back. Alright, so I'm just taking the nut off that came with the spindle, and then there's a spacer. So that spacer is really important. A spacer, or that washer, goes under the pulley. And what you'll see here, this is where I noticed that the pulley brake was on the wrong side of the spindle. So I got to take the entire thing back off and then put it back on with the brake on the right side. Alright, now that we got that fixed and the brake arm is on the correct side, we're just putting it all back together. Again, there's that spacer that goes on the spindle assembly before the pulley. Very important. We're going to put the pulley on. And right now I'm just attaching the spring that goes back to that brake arm. Alright, now I'm just going to put the nut back on top of the pulley. Okay, now that that's back on, I'm going to flip the deck back over. And we're going to get the blade back on. Now, as I mentioned earlier, originally I thought maybe the blade was just bent. The blade was fine, so I'm going to put that blade back on. These blades are both relatively new. I think they only actually had one mowing. Okay, with the blade bolt, you'll have a washer and a lock washer. So you want to make sure you get those on. Having an impact gun for this is definitely nice. You don't need an impact gun, but if you're going to use a regular wrench, you'd have to brace the blade somehow to tension it down. All right, you'll see here in a second, I'm just checking to make sure that the blades are level. Again, with that thing loose, I was scalping originally. It's a little hard to tell in the video, but that is pretty much perfectly level. Okay, the other thing you can do, and this is what I did when the deck was still attached to the mower, is you can scribe a line and then rotate the blade, and both sides of the blade should be hitting the same point. And you can pretty much do that anywhere around the deck, and as well as on the other side too, obviously. All right, and then the last thing we have to do is just put that guard back on. It's just 3 bolts. Again, that's a hex head bolt to get those on. All right, the last thing I'm going to do here real quick is just I'm going to check the idler pulley arm. I have a previous video where I actually fixed that, which was one mow before I damaged this. But what I'm doing here is just checking that pulley brake to make sure it's functioning properly, which it is. All right, that's just another shot of the broken piece that we took off. As you can see, that one ear came off. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 3-point connection spindle. There are also 4-point connection spindles. They all attach the same, but you just need to be aware of which one you have, which I'm going to show you next here in just a moment. Okay, this is going to be a quick walkthrough on how to look up a part number for this mower, or any mower really. So as I showed you at the beginning, the model number is located under the seat on this. The model number is 917-272-751. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into Google and we're going to type that model number into the search bar. And the first thing that kind of comes up in my search is that Sears Part Direct website. Now I have another video that goes into more detail on some other options of sources to use, like jack small engine. In this case, I've looked up multiple parts recently and I just know that this is the website to go to. Okay, we're going to verify the model number at the top again, 917-272-751. That is the correct model number. And we're going to come down here and we're going to scroll until we find the mower deck, which is right here. Then we're going to click expand. Okay, this isn't an interactive parts diagram like Jack Small Engine has. So typically you have to look up the number for the diagram, which in this case is 14 for the spindle. All right, and then on this page you do have to manually scroll. So normally you would use that part number right there, or that diagram number I should say, to find your part. Okay, in this case it comes up as a different number that's on the diagram, but that's fine. Okay, so this is the part that we want right here. Okay, the part number for this is 130794. And as you can see, there's multiple other part numbers associated with this as well. So this particular price is $45. Now, I've ordered stuff recently off that page, and there are some delay times on orders that I'm not happy about. So what I commonly would do anyway is search the part on Google for best prices. Now, a bunch of stuff that does come up is a bunch of the Amazon stuff. Sometimes I'll trust those parts. It just depends. On this one, I didn't have a great feeling about it. So what I did end up doing was eventually I found one on the Home Depot website. So this is our part number here, 130794. As you can see, this is a aftermarket brand, but it is one of the more well-known ones. And that's the part that we have. This was $30, $31 with free shipping. So this was the route that I went. Okay, so like I showed you in the video, one thing that you want to verify that I really suggest is make sure that the part does come with the mounting hardware, which this one does. So this had the 3 mounting bolts for the deck. It also had the nut and the spacer on the top for the pulley, and it came with the bolt, the washer, and the lock washer for the blade. So as you saw, these are, parts that are corroded, and it's very common, especially for those 3 bolts in my scenario. Some, like I said, some models may have 4 to snap. I did try to just loosen them with a wrench instead of an impact gun, but they still snapped. So you want to verify that, especially if you decide to go a cheaper route like one of the Amazon spindles. But that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions or comments, please comment in the comment bar. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. And we hope you come back again for future content. Thanks.